And with that, we are live. That means you're here for another edition of the Astro Weather on 11/2/23. And got some good feedback on the new opener. I would say it's probably 70-30 new opener versus old opener. I do like the old opener, though. And I think I might rotate them a bit. And I might come up with another one as well. I think it's good to have options. Don't you? Options are good. Too many options are not good. Too many options are overwhelming. But a couple of really good options are always good to have. So I might even work on a third one. I think it might be it's always a fun little exercise to kind of get a little creative. There was a time when I was obsessed, Scorpio rising. There was a time when I was obsessed with the early version of GarageBand. I was using GarageBand back in, oh God, when was that? I think probably around 2005, I started to use GarageBand. And this is when Apple had the Genius Bar, and you could go and actually learn things from Apple, which was great, right? It was like just a great service. So I made a couple appointments and I said, how do you use this GarageBand thing? And this guy took me through it. And then I just took to it like a duck in water. And then I just became obsessed with making tracks from GarageBand. And then I started to buy loop packs from other companies so I could have more loops and beats and more options to kind of fill everything in. And I think I've got about, I don't know, I think I have about 10 songs online somewhere from that period of time. And it was a lot of fun. It was my favorite moment was when I took an a cappella track. It was kind of a mix. There was this artist from Oregon named Laura Love, and she had this song. There was just a vocal part, and I built an entire song around it with drums and guitar and bass, and there was even like I got a like a rap sample, and I dropped it in and created an entire song just around her vocal piece. It was a lot of fun. And and at that time I was actually in between gigs, and I'm thinking, man, I would really like to go to school and get into some sound engineering and like take this thing to another level, right? And I remember I was married at the time, and I brought it up with my now ex-wife, and she like flipped her wig, blew her stack, because that's what I wanted to do. And ladies and gentlemen, that's when you realize that your marriage probably has a shelf life on it, right? Probably has a shelf life on it. So anyway, now I get to do 30-second clips. What's going on? We got a nice little soiree going, the morning soiree. You got Michael, my man Michael. There's Pedrita. What's going on, DJ MC? Kelly and kids. There she is, Christine Mose. Christine Mose, great hugger. If you could get a virtual hug from Christine, or a real hug, it would be great. She's just a great hugger. And too bad you can't get a virtual one. There's my man TJ. What's going on? The glue guy. Veronica's Barn is here, checking in from very early California with her coffee in hand. EB, my man Ryan. Nugs checking in. What's going on, Nugs? Starting to feel like fall here in Florida. It's definitely fall here. There she is. Super Marge, third eye activated. Scuba Kel, the deep diver in the house. Lunchbox 81. Janine, PMSO, hanging laundry. Mark S. We got an all-star lineup here. Liddy Lou. What's going on, Liddy? Hope you're staying nice and warm up there in the northern part of the state. Terry Catterley, Road Trip 1981. Maria DeAnge checking in from our friends in France, our allies in France. Ashley Christina, Rich J, Harriet Bowie, M. Schwinnard. We got a crew here this morning. A good crew. All right. I want to thank everybody for hitting. Oh, Brandon Lee and Julie Moss. Can't forget you. I want to thank everybody for hitting that like button because I am starting to show up a little bit more in the algos, in the algorithm, um, which is good. Thank you. Thank you for doing that. And again, as I related yesterday, I'm seeing people subscribe to the channel who I know had subscribed to the channel and they had to resubscribe. This is the little game we play here. So if you have not subscribed or you think you subscribed, you may just want to subscribe and hit the bell again. We're in a war against the algorithms, which is unfortunate, but that's just the way it is. And I want to thank all of you for your support in doing that. If you feel like buying me a cup of coffee, there's a link in the description of the show, which would allow you to do that. And yeah, and thank you to everybody who's done that as well. Let's see, Julianne Forster. That's upsetting. It's look, I've been dealing with it for years. Julie Moss, look at this. I'll show you right there. I had to resub yesterday. Yeah. Yeah. There you go. Oh, look at that. I pronounced M. Chenard's last name the right way, and you're new. And I'm MJ, and I'm new. Oh, well, thank you. And you're awesome too. My man Steve is here. It is Thursday. It is Thursday. What's going on, my brother Steve? Good to see you. All right, should we jump into look at this background? I love this background. This is a sunrise in North Dakota. I don't know where in North Dakota, but I just love the colors and it's kind of got that desolate Scorpio. I like Scorpio season. I really do. Maybe it's because I'm a Scorpio rising, but I dig it. Let's see here. What do we got? I guess we should get into the Astro Weather. Let us not delay nor tarry any longer. We have a purpose at hand. And that purpose is to divine and define the qualities of the day before us. Or if you're Maria's case, the night before you. Here we go. Looks like we got a little bit of Star David action in there today, huh? This is off center, mystic rectangle. I would say harmonics are dominating over the dissonance. Today is more of a harmonic day. We have that moon in Cancer. There it is. We talked about it yesterday. The moon is in its own sign in Cancer, right? So it's in dignity in Cancer. And, the moon in Cancer is one of the most steadfast and loyal and nurturing moons in the zodiac. And today, right out of the gate, we got a trine with the sun. I really like the energy, even for people who are winding their way down. This moon in Cancer, moving into trine with the sun and Mars and Mercury. This is some very interesting sleep energy, dream energy. By tomorrow, the moon moves into a trine with Neptune, and in a closer trine, also probably been on the backside with Mercury, also in a trine with Ceres. And Ceres is connected to the moon in terms of nurturing and growing and supporting and all the stuff that we associate with the feminine principle. So the feminine principle is very strong. The mama bear is coming out, by the way. You get that moon trine Mars energy. That is the mama bear, especially with Mars and Scorpio. How does it relate to you on a personal level? If you have values and you want to defend those values, step right up. Step right up. Now, when we're dealing with Cancer, there's also a high degree of sensitivity. And Cancer's moving in square with that Chiron. So you have to take a risk. Chiron always infers a risk, especially when you have the angular dissonance, right? With the square. So yeah, you have to risk, to some degree, confronting your feelings. And for a lot of people, confronting their feelings is it's not a easy thing to do. Now, some people confront their feelings or are in their feelings, but what's interesting about people that are always in their feelings is that in many ways it's really just a reflexive response to sort of their life and what's going on in the world. And for people like that, they need to be less in their feelings and more in an objective space. And for people that are in a more objective space, the feeling component can be at times a bit more difficult. So today there is this, there's a risk reward involved. The risk, I think, is, if I were to put a percentage on it, probably about 50%, because all of the goodness, you got that trine with Saturn, the trine with the sun, as the moon moves into its transit through Cancer, you get the trine with Mars. So in even later, it gets into that sextile with Venus. So for the next 48 hours, ladies and gentlemen, your emotions are your friend, right? Especially if you define them in a way. Cancer is a very conservative sign. It is the definition of conservative, right? Cancer saves. It literally, Cancer is a sign where it's like, well, let's just save that scrap of soap. We'll save it. We'll add it to the other scraps of soap. Oh, don't throw the bacon grease away. Save the bacon grease. Got to save the bacon grease. Oh yeah, let those plants go to seed. We'll plant them. That's all Cancer stuff. Got a coupon? Let's clip it. That's Cancer. Cancer is a great coupon clipper of the zodiac. So there's just fiscally and physically, Cancer is conservative. It is not a sign given to wild swings of emotional excess. We'll leave that up to the moon in Pisces. Now, the downside with the moon in Cancer is that sometimes that uber conservative nature can be interpreted as, well, cheap. And to all you Cancers out there, love you, right? But you know what I'm talking about. Cancer knows where every dollar goes, and that's not a bad thing. But we're not really talking about that today. We're talking about being able to address things on an emotional level that means something to you, and there is a bit of a risk, but it's a risk worth taking. It is a risk worth taking, and I really feel like, in the midst of everything that we're going through right now on this crazy social level, I mean, I'm going to play a clip today on 15 minutes. Just brutal. It's brutal. You got these IDF guys that are tossing around, the Orthodox Jews like rag dolls in Israel. It's like, whoa, it's not a good look. If you are a God-fearing person, that is not a good look. Okay, just saying. But these are this is some of the energy that's coming through now. The energy of preservation, the energy of conservation. It's all very Cancerian, and we have that sextile to Jupiter right now. It's funny. I was over on Twitter before the show, and I tweet back and forth with S.J. Anderson, who's a really good astrologer, and he talked about this moon sextile to Jupiter, and I said, let's all go to the Shire and smoke a long pipe with Bilbo Baggins and his buddies, right? It's a very cozy energy. Okay. Cozy energy, cozy up today, feed yourself. It's important because Cancer nurtures, and it's a cliche, but you can't nurture anybody else until you nurture yourself. Bottom line. All right, make yourself a really nice cup of coffee or nice tea. If you're a cook, put something on the stove. It's going to maybe take a couple hours. If you're a meat eater, get yourself a pot roast together or something like that. Right? This is a day where you need to nurture and to fill it, because we are in a long distance in test of endurance. This is where we are right now. We are going to be tested at every step of the way. What we see, what we hear, how the people who supposedly represent us fail fail in their duties to represent us, the existential threats of the hordes that have been let into the country and have crossed the border, right? All those things are in front of us. So you better nurture up, and sometimes nurturing, sometimes it feels good, right? Like I'm going to make myself something that, man, I really like this. Nutritional comfort food, something along those lines. But nurturing isn't always just being comfortable, right? Nurturing is also looking at like, okay, well, cancer is associated with the past. It's always associated with the past. It is a very sentimental sign. But with the grand trine, you're also looking at, again, what do I need to do to prepare for the future? Mars is action, and the moon is trining Mars. And it's also in sextile with Saturn, which is, hey, look, we might have a bit of a time out here and have a nice little cup of cocoa and maybe some, I don't know, pot roast with polenta. That sounds really good. But that's just in the short term. That's in the immediate. This aspect really promotes more long-term nurturing. And long-term nurturing takes time, right? You have to really extend your field of vision. I like this day. I think the energy is great today. We're moving into that Venus-Neptune opposition closer and closer. So by the time we hit Sunday, that Venus-Neptune opposition is definitely in full effect. And I would say be mindful of expectations in relationships. Any relationship, doesn't matter what it is. And that's an aspect that I think really promotes sobriety. You want to, there's enough potential intoxicating elements in this chart that you really don't need anything. A good walk in nature, right? With this moon in Cancer trining Mars and trining Mercury, that may be all you need. Spending time outside tonight, looking at the moon and whatever the moon is. There are elements here that you don't really need anything substantially mind altering. It's kind of in the air right now. And I think that we're living in a time where, we need to be very clear. We also have a mystic rectangle, which has aligned itself. We have Venus at 23 Virgo. We have the Mercury at 18 Scorpio. There's Ceres coming in at 20 Scorpio, puts into the Cancerian decan, right, which we talked about yesterday. Coming in and trining Neptune, Mercury, Neptune trine. I love it. Let your imagination work for you. We live in a time where, we've all developed really good research and fact-finding skills. That has been really heightened because we have the internet as a tool, and we have been initiated into this period where we're always pulling back the cover, right? We want to find out what's beneath the surface of things. And I guess maybe the most imaginative kind of outgrowth of that would be things like memes, which are imaginative and funny. But it's almost as if we've put that part of ourselves on the back burner. It's kind of like that's a luxury. Imagination's a luxury. We have to deal with facts over feelings. Well, I'm here to tell you today that with Mercury trining Neptune and Mars trining coming in and starting to trine Neptune, imagination is going to be at its peak. It'll be at its peak. And so this is a good time to kickstart your imagination. And Scorpio is a very rich sign because it mines the subconscious. And there's a whole fertile field of archetypal expression that dwells in Scorpio. The two houses that represent the collective unconscious, in my estimation, are the 8th house and the 12th house. In the 8th house, you're going to the underworld, right? That is the expression of the underworld with the 8th house. And not bad. It's not a bad thing. And then the 12th house is very archetypal because everything exists in the 12th house, from the root to the fruit and from alpha to omega, right? So you have a wide variety of archetypal expression in the 12th house. The 8th house definitely rooted in that place connected to the underworld. So I think this is a good day, right? And even Venus coming into this trine with Pluto, a stronger trine with Pluto. This is a time where you can really kind of lace up your alliances. And if there's any miscommunication in the air that you want to take care of, this is a good day to do it. There is a bit of a risk with that moon squaring Chiron, but just get over that. Just face, oh, is this person going to be upset? How do I couch it? Right? Get over it. Just get over it. And I think you're going to see some real mama bear action in the media over the next 24 or 48 hours. You're going to see some of that. What do we think about these oppositions? To me, this has a lot to do with spending. To me, these oppositions are collective. We're dealing with things like Israel and the budget and the IRS. And it's interesting that, you'll get your money for Ukraine and you'll get your money for Israel, but we're going to take money away from your IRS operation. I guess in the grand scheme of things, if you're somebody that's been sort of on the, sitting on the edge of your seat, kind of looking at your door, waiting for the IRS guy to show up, maybe you think that's going to be a reasonable trade-off. Just saying, right? Because Mars in Scorpio is definitely IRS agents. Scorpio is other people's money. And Mars, of course, is very martial, right? So that's in the air as well. And that's a big discussion as part of this so-called budget, whatever they've got going on. We do have an in conjunct with, again, Mars and Mercury, and it's with Chiron. So again, it kind of gets into this square with the moon and approaching your I wouldn't say fear per se, but approaching a vulnerable area that you have to address. Because when you address it, your will is strengthened. Your will, it's like, oh, good. Well, I've looked at this, and I've actually conquered this. And every time you conquer a fear, you're stronger for it. You're building up the reservoir of your will, and that's what we're talking about. Not a lot of air in the sky, so there's the challenge with that is objectivity. So when we have all this crazy shit happening with Palestine and Gaza and Israel, to some extent Ukraine, there's no objectivity. I mean, look at all the water. It's just, you just go down here. Oh my God. So emotions are really kind of ruling the day here. And then we do have some fire with the true node Chiron. We're not going to talk about the MC because this is just the chart for the moment. So objectivity is very hard to tap into right now. People are in their feelings, and you have a lot of earth as well. When you have water and earth, it's a fertile ground. But what are you fertilizing? First of all, what are you growing? And what are you fertilizing? Make sure you're growing and fertilizing the fruit or the vegetables or the metaphorical herbs that are going to serve you. And you're not growing and fertilizing the weeds of your psyche. You got to pluck those weeds out, right? And it's very easy right now to get sucked in. I was looking at Twitter yesterday, and there's this guy named Kevin Youkilis who used to play for the Boston Red Sox, and Kevin Youkilis happens to be Jewish. And there was a video of some campus protest, and then I guess, who knows how these things start, a group of pro-Palestinian protesters beating up somebody who was pro-Israel. And man, did people get into their feelings around that. You don't know the story about any of it, right? We don't know the story about half of this stuff. But it's like, oh, okay, if I was there, I would have taken a bat to these people. And then all these people are chiming in because Kevin Youkilis played professional baseball. And they're, I stand with Uke, and Uke sounds a lot like Ukraine, but it's not. I stand with Uke, and I stand with it. I mean, it's just, this is the level of emotion that's being stirred up right now. It is a maelstrom, and you want to make sure that you don't get swept up in it. You can be passionate, you can be emotional. Nobody's saying that you can't do that, but just be aware of which garden you're watering. That's the takeaway from today's Astro Weather. All right. So before I get into the star of the day, there's a couple of pieces around the star of the day. Last week, when I was looking at who was going to be the star of the day, so we were talking October 25th, one of the people that I had considered was Bobby Knight. And Bobby Knight was the coach of the Indiana Pacers for quite a long time. And then after that, he had a brief run at the University of Texas, El Paso. And I don't know why I chose the person that I did besides Knight. I forget who it was. But Knight's chart is one of those bundle charts. Like he had a real singular purpose. And there wasn't much outside of Bob Knight's chart besides coaching and his relationship with being an outdoorsman as a hunter and a fisher. Now, he was a voracious reader. He could talk to you about anything, but it's a very condensed little slice of that chart. And during the 70s and the 80s and going into the 90s, Bob Knight was known as America's taskmaster as the coach of the Indiana Hoosiers. And it's always interesting to look at certain figures. And when you're at a certain point of your development, you see somebody in a particular way, right? So when I was in my 20s, I knew about Bob Knight. I knew about, his very hands-on and almost tyrannical style of coaching. And at that time in my life, I said to myself, well, if I ever had a kid and he was really good at basketball, I wouldn't send him to Bob Knight because he's out of control. And a lot of this was created by the media. And some of this stuff later on was valid about Bob Knight because he was outliving his time, right? Looking back on it now from where I am and what I know about Bob Knight, I would have sent my kid to Bob Knight to play at Indiana because as you really dove into the guy, you found he was a very complex individual. He loved his players, and he stayed in touch with all of them over the course of their careers, whether they're in the NBA or they were working in a corporate job or whatever they were doing, right? Once you were in with Bob, he had that scorpionic dedication to you. Bob Knight was ride or die. And if you weren't going to ride and he wasn't going to ride, it was die. And Bob Knight passed away yesterday. And again, it's one of those things where I look at somebody who's a bit older and I'm like, wow, Bob Knight's still alive. How long is this going to? I can't tell you how many times I've had this experience over the past year and thinking about these people who are older and in a relatively brief period of time, they pass away. And Bob Knight falls into the birthday effect. His birthday is October 25th. He passed away, I think, on October 31st, or I think late into the 31st or early in the 1st. And he passed away. So again, it's another example of the birthday effect, living long enough to have that last birthday. It's really interesting how many times we've seen the birthday effect take place in people's lives. So another person who I thought about today for the star of the day was Larry Fink, because today is Larry Fink's birthday. Larry Fink, if you're not familiar with him, he is the hatchet man for BlackRock. And I've looked at his chart before, and I'm not going to look at his chart today. And one of the things that really has stuck out for me with Larry Fink's chart is that it's an unspectacular chart. It really is. It's, if you didn't know he was Larry Fink, and I just read this chart, I couldn't come away with it and say, well, this is the Lex Luthor of the financial world. So in a lot of ways, it speaks more to the system that has elevated Larry Fink than Larry Fink himself. Right place, right time. That's not who we're talking about today. So today we are talking about somebody who I think in many ways is more interesting than Larry Fink. And today's star of the day, he might be the anti Larry Fink, actually, is Pat Buchanan. This is the True Hemp Science star of the day. True Hemp Science is your one stop shop for all things CBD. And if you type in 15MINS, you will get a little goodie bag with a bunch of cool stuff with your ordering. And I'm sure including some of Chris's legendary gummies, the Moon Dust variety and the Sleep variety. You may not get both. You may get one or the other, but you'll get some. You'll get some really cool stuff with your order. It's like Christmas when it shows up. Spend $100 or more, type in 15MINS, and you'll get your goodies. If you spend $150 or more, free shipping, so you save a little bit more money. And of course, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee. True Hemp Science, your one-stop shop for the best CBD products on the internet. Okay, Pat Buchanan, the ultimate paleoconservative and a man of great contradiction. Now, what do we know about Pat? He was born in Washington, D.C. He was basically born in the Beltway. And with the exception of a few stints outside of D.C., he moved to St. Louis for a while, for about 4 years, and wrote a very incendiary book about Martin Luther King with the help of the CIA, giving him lots of dirty leaks. Pat Buchanan has been the voice of the Beltway for a number of years. And he started off as a speechwriter for Nixon. When we think of Buchanan, we think more about more about Pat as a columnist. And he is the, Buchanan is the original Trump in a lot of ways. Some people would say, well, that was Ross Perot. It's really Pat Buchanan. And Pat Buchanan is the epitome of being a paleoconservative. And, what we know about Pat Buchanan as well is that he can be very polarizing and shocking, right? The sun in the third house. He's got his true node conjunct the sun. And he has Mercury right down there also in the third house, kind of ingressing into his fourth house. And he has a poison pen, right? If Pat Buchanan set his sights on you or a target or an issue, he would be relentless, whether it was immigration, NAFTA, the Chinese. He's even spoken out against sending money to Israel, right? Pat Buchanan, in a lot of ways, has been quite fearless in his the application of his skills. And he cut his teeth as a speechwriter for Nixon. He was very young at the time. He was born in 38. So I guess it was 68. So I guess he was 30 years old when he comes in and sort of gets his boots on the ground. Now he starts with commentary, political commentary via the pen, and then he moves into radio and eventually on the TV. He has a bit of a run on Fox. And to this day, Pat Buchanan is still in the game. He's still writing, still commentating. He's got that Leo ascendant. What's interesting about this Leo ascendant is Pat Buchanan really sort of frames himself as a man of the people, right? But he's a bit of a hypocrite too, because the things that he rails against, like for instance, he rails against China. Pat Buchanan has business interests with China. Like all the things that Pat Buchanan has spoken about and used as kind of a bullpit or a bully platform, like he's transgressed a number of those areas. So Pat Buchanan has profited handsomely off being in Washington and being a columnist and knowing all the people in all the right places. It's very scorpionic. Pat Buchanan is a very wealthy man, and he dines at the best establishments. He doesn't roll up his sleeves. Bob Knight, who I was just talking about, Bob Knight had an obsession with finding places that had like delicious dives. Bob Knight was a connoisseur of delicious dives. This is not Pat Buchanan. Pat Buchanan can always be seen at the best restaurants in Washington, D.C. or Baltimore, Maryland, right? If there was, the hoi polloi or hot cuisine, Pat Buchanan was there, and it's that Leo rising, which gives him, in a lot of ways, kind of a sense of entitlement. But on the other hand, he's somebody who pounds the drum for the Vox Populi, and you can see this in his 11th house with Chiron in Cancer, and he's got this trine with the sun, and he's got this grand trine with the moon, right in the 11th house. This is the people, and there is something there that Buchanan has a link to. He ran for president twice, uh, both times as a third party candidate, and he sucked some votes away as that third party candidate. And he's one of these people, again, very polarizing, and you'll get this with scorpionic people. And he's even got those scorpionic eyes, which we've talked about. Bob Knight was very polarizing. Larry Fink, very polarizing. With Gemini, even though it's a sign that is kind of rooted in duality, there are times when Gemini can be polarizing, but not as much as Scorpio. With Pat Buchanan, you're either going to love him or you're going to hate him. And that's the same thing with Bob Knight. Bob Knight, you either loved him with all of his warts and weirdness, or you hated Bob Knight. And you saw Bob Knight as a symbol of a different time in America and a more authoritarian time, and that time was over, right? So this is what you get with Scorpio. His wife, he's been married to the same woman, and she does everything for him, right? She does everything. She answers his mail. She makes his appointments. There's Venus in the 4th house, right? That's his home, partnership. And she probably does everything out of his home or out of their home, right? And then we have this Venus-Saturn trine where she's very, very useful. So for Pat Buchanan, relationships need to be useful. And I'm not saying that he's exploiting his wife at all. And she's, probably benefited from the participation in being Pat Buchanan's, right-hand gal, right? But you can see that with the Venus-Saturn, long-standing. These are long-standing relationships. And with Saturn in the 8th house, Pat Buchanan knows how the game is played. He understands it inside and out. And sometimes he works it and exploits it for his own purposes. Hey, you're in Washington, D.C. I guess that's what happens there. And he's got that Venus-Pluto trine too, right? So not only does he know where the bodies are buried, not only does he know how the game works, he's not above tapping into it and siphoning off resources from it. Very interesting chart. He's got the same degree rising just about as Trump. So that means he has algol on his midheaven. And what's interesting about Pat Buchanan is that he's very hard to listen to. He's got one of those voices that is kind of like this. He doesn't have the deep, rich, sonorous tones of a Rush Limbaugh. So you can see this with algol, right? Like, and even Trump does not have a great voice. And Trump's always kind of up here in the higher register. And I think this is a byproduct of algol. So Buchanan, in my estimation, is a much better writer than he is an orator. And when you're going to be a president or running for president, you have to be a pretty good orator. You have to be able to speak to people and speak to people in a way where they'll want to listen. I never liked Pat Buchanan's voice, but his political voice is more interesting. So the written word, which really is the 3rd house, is where Buchanan excels. Fascinating guy in a lot of ways, not afraid to take on the establishment, even though in a lot of ways, Pat is the establishment. There's your star of the day, the True Hemp Science star of the day, the one, the only Pat Buchanan. You know what's interesting? And again, he's born around the same time as Bob Knight, right? When what's interesting, because he's just moving into Boomerville here, with Pluto and Leo. There will never be another Pat Buchanan. Never. There will never be another Bob Knight. So when these people pass away, they're gone. Like the sort of the archetypal mold for these people will be gone, for better or worse. And some people say, well, good, we don't need them. Well, I think they're interesting for all of their warts and for all of their um, sort of human, very human traits and frailties. When these people go, they're gone. We'll never see their type again. So, appreciate the iconoclasm, appreciate the weird inconsistencies while you can. These are people that are deeply woven into the fabric of America and our story, and they're all writing their final chapters. All right. That's it. Thanks for being here. What did Algae? Oh, we got Algae. What's going on? Yeah, Pat had some interesting issues around Israel, didn't he? That was one of his hot button speaking points. Yep. Okay. Good comment. Very good comment. They're symbols of a dying culture. It's true. I would agree with you with that. We are in the winter of America. We are in the fourth turning, and there will be a spring, and hopefully we'll all be there to rejoice and celebrate upon its arrival. Use your head in order to discern what's real, your heart to discern what's possible. Join me over on 15 Minutes of Flame on Rumble. Until then, have a blessed day, and bye for now.